Hello again. My name's Charles R. Sabo, and I'm back doing another teaching video on the book of Isaiah. As a matter of fact, in 2018 and 2019, I wrote a Bible commentary on the entire 66 chapter book of Isaiah. It published it in January of 2020. It's now in the market, hardback binder book, 623 pages. It's a college textbook, Bible study. You can use it in a Bible study, just in doing research. So please take advantage of this. Now, here I am doing teaching videos on it, explaining things in a little bit more detail verbally as I read through it, and hopefully you appreciate that. Now, chapter 20 we're going to go into today. I do have teaching videos in the first 19 chapters of Isaiah on YouTube here. Chapter 20 is coming up here where it's a short chapter, all right, followed by chapter 20, which is a little bit more detailed. So we'll go into chapter 20 here. It's a short video, so bear with me and we'll get through it. Isaiah is so amazing how there's so much theology in the book of Isaiah, and you need to understand it. It's very deep, very much layered. All right, so here we go. Verse 1. In the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, when Sargon the king of Assyria sent him and fought against Ashdod and took it. So the purpose of the first verse in chapter 20 is to reveal the timeline by which this Isaiah prophecy was given. The Bible does not mention this event within the scriptures, but the historical accounts have testified this event to be in the year of 711 BC. Okay, so we don't know about this war between Tartan and Ashdod, but this is the whole intent was to give us the year of it, right? And so the biblical account doesn't give us a year, does it? But historical accounts give us 711 BC. And I think I got that from Andrew G. Vaughn and Ann E. Killebrew in Jerusalem and Bible and Archaeology. All right, so there you go. All right, verse 2. At the same time spoke the Lord by Isaiah the son of Amoz, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from off your loins, and put off your shoe from your foot. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. Yep, God told Isaiah to walk naked. Now Isaiah, being an obedient servant of the Lord, did as God commanded him and stripped down absolutely naked. Certain commentaries want to imply that Isaiah was not totally naked, but stripped down to his inner garments, as if wearing underwear and a nightshirt. That would not be the context and the point. The context of the point, and the point, which God was to make on the people of Egypt and Ethiopia. There's a point God's making. If he tells Isaiah to walk naked, why would he walk in underwear or nightshirt? The point is the nakedness. That is what God's putting across here. Verse 3. And the Lord said, Like as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia. Now, kind of keeps you hanging here. It goes on to the next verse, but we're going to first break this one down. This was commanded upon Isaiah to fulfill, not to be concerned about the humiliation that Isaiah would potentially feel. Isaiah's faith was being tested or strengthened by his carrying out this embarrassing task of walking buck naked for 3 years. While he walked through Egypt and Ethiopia displaying himself, okay? So 3 years he didn't walk through Jerusalem, so these people he didn't know, and so it made it a little bit better. All right, maybe they laughed at him, maybe they didn't, maybe they ooh and awed. I don't know. Who knows what? I don't know what Isaiah looked like during this time. The purpose was to draw the attention to him, who could then convey the coming captivity and the humiliation that the Egyptians and the Ethiopians would feel. Okay, follow it so far. So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. So When Nahum prophesied of Nineveh's defeat, he provided his Assyrian readers with a comparison by which they could relate to. Asher's defense was in 615 BC, and Nineveh's defeat was in 612 BC. So Nahum wrote this before Nineveh's fall in 612 BC. Excuse me, I have a thing that's going off, so I'm going to kind of silence it for now, so it just vibrates. Sorry about the interruption. All right, so we're going to read something from Nahum, chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. Are you better than Populus? No, that was situated among the rivers, and that had waters around about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was so infinite. Put and Lubim were your helpers. These are people, or places, actually, places now. Yet was she carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children also were dashed in pieces in the top of all the streets. And they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. Right? Okay. So here you have Ethiopia and Egypt were the strength of No, and Put and Lubim were their helpers. Yet she was carried away, she being No, the city of No. Okay, so it's a warning to Ethiopia and Egypt, right? That was in Nahum. So this is concerning the same time period, right? The captivity of Egypt and Ethiopia, spoken by Nahum, happened between 681 BC and 668 BC. The defeat was at the hand of the succeeding son of King Sennacherib, King Esarhaddon. The succeeding son of King Sennacherib, King Esarhaddon. He reigned between 681 and 668 BC and had written logs, right? And his exploit through Egypt are still in existence. All right. So 711 BC, we're talking 11 plus another 20. So 31 years later, that captivity of Egypt and Ethiopia was to happen. Right. God and the king of Assyria's intent was to humiliate those taken into captivity by stripping them buck naked with all their private areas exposed. As I spoke earlier concerning verse 3, Isaiah was to provide the Egyptians and the Ethiopians a visual example in order to shock them into reality of what was to come. When commentators attempt to soften the reality of Isaiah's 3-year ministry through the land by insinuating that he wore undergarments for 3 years to show himself poor and destitute, they testify that God and the Assyrians were being polite to the Egyptians by letting them wear undergarments during their defeated walk into captivity. Kind of get the drift of this? You heretics that want to say, oh no, he didn't ask him to walk naked. Well, he did. He didn't have undergarments on. Oh, so did Isaiah walk in undergarments and so forth and not buck naked because the Assyrians were going to let the Egyptians and Ethiopians walk around in undergarments rather than buck naked? Come on. They twist, they soften things. No, this is what happened. The buck nakedness was meant to be. When God declares naked, he means buck naked, even with their buttocks uncovered to the shame of Egypt. Right? So, see what it says here? Even with their buttocks uncovered to the shame of Egypt. So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptian prisoners and the Ethiopian captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered to the shame of Egypt. So there's nothing softened here by saying Isaiah walked in his undergarments. No, because the Assyrians were going to make the Egyptians walk buck naked. All right? So, okay, let's go on here. Let's see. And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, have respect to Egypt. All right, verse 5. And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and of Egypt, their glory. The impact which Isaiah was to make and to bring to the Ethiopians to be ashamed of what they would expect will come of them. Isaiah's nakedness was to be upsetting to them because they did not want to be exposed in the same humiliating way as Isaiah was. Isaiah was to succeed in his ministry to them. The Egyptians were to be ashamed because they had always been the superior race and were driven to such great fear of this humiliation to come. All right? So it's a successful ministry. It took 30 years for this to happen. So maybe their repentance in those first 10 or 20 caused it to be 31 years later. All right, moving on. Verse 6. And the inhabitants of this isle shall say in that day, Behold, such is our expectation, whether we flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria, and how shall we escape? Now, the Hebrew word for isle is I-Y, which also means coast. The translation should be, and the inhabitant of the coast. Nahum 3:8 does convey the city of No, that was situate among the rivers that had the waters around it, right? Round about it. All right. So that fulfills what this island shall say. The Hebrew word for isle, it actually means coast. So this coast shall say in that day, right? The coast of the river. All right. So the invasion of Egypt will happen quickly, and the inhabitants will see no escape and nowhere to run for protection from the ensuing attack. Nahum 3:8 also reveals the city of No, that her wall was from the sea. How shall we escape? Right? Coast. And the inhabitant of this coast shall say in that day, Behold, such is our expectation, whether we shall flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. How shall we escape? Because they were on the coast. Her wall was from the sea. Go back here. Where does Nahum talk about No? Right here. Are you better than populous No, that was situated among the rivers and had waters around about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea? They're calling it back over here an isle, but it's actually a coast to the sea with rivers also. So it was pretty much trapped, right? The city of No. All right. So is that the last verse? In the inhabitants of the asylum. Yeah. So that fulfills chapter 20. So it was a warning to Egypt that just as Isaiah was walking buck naked in their presence, just as the city of No was destitute, they were trapped, so will Egypt and Ethiopia be. Okay? All right. So there you have it. That's chapter 20. Very short and sweet. Hopefully you understand it. Rewind and look at it again. But it happened. It's history now. So anyway, we move on. Next up, chapter 21, a very interesting chapter, I must say. So until next time, may God bless you. Have a great rest of the day.